So with the markets fluctuating, many Canadians, of course, have concerns about their investments, especially if you're retired or about to retire. Let's bring in Jessica Moorhouse, a financial counselor, also the best-selling author of Everything But Money, and she's in Toronto. Jessica, what have you been hearing from your clients?
It's been a busy day of me trying to calm people down. A lot of people are very anxious, very concerned, and not just, people headed towards retirement, people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. Everyone across the board is really concerned about what's going on.
We put out the call for people who might have questions for you, and we got, as we always do on this program, lots of answers. Peter says he's retired. All of his retirement money is at stake. Thinking of pulling out of the market tomorrow. Trump isn't going to budge. He's in it for himself. Jessica, what would you say to Peter?
I'd say it'd be very dangerous to try to predict what Trump is going to do or not do. I certainly don't know what to expect from day to day for him, so I wouldn't try to base any of my investment decisions on what he may do. He may change his mind tomorrow, and then the market may react in a very different way. But I do caution anyone from pulling out all of their investments and reacting in that way. That can be, catastrophic.
And if you did pull out all your investments, where would you put them?
Well, a lot of people are sitting on cash. A lot of people have a lot of no confidence in the stock market, so they're sitting on cash. But typically what happens is it's very difficult to get back into the market. You're going to wait until, it looks like it's going to recover. And then you may be buying back at a higher price point. So you're locking in losses and they're getting back into the market when it's more expensive.
Here's an email from Jeff. He says, I'm retired now, and I haven't needed to take money from my RRSP yet, but I noticed it's lost a few $1,000s in the last couple of days. I'm worried there'll be nothing left when I actually need to take money out next year. What can I do to protect my RRSP?
I think it's really important to not look at those short-term losses. I tell people if you don't have to, don't look at your investments more than once per month, especially if you don't need to, potentially touch your RRSP until next year. A loss today may not mean anything a year from now. So I'd say really focus on that long-term mindset and make sure you have, your ducks in a row in terms of your retirement income plan, your portfolios in the right asset allocation, all that stuff.
Gavin is 21 years old. He's from Newfoundland and Labrador. He emailed us with this question. I'm about to invest in the stock market for the first time to make sure I have a secure future for years down the road. Should I wait to invest due to the possible recession, or should I invest now?
It is impossible to know what's going to happen with the stock market day to day or in the next year. I always say time in the market beats timing the market. I've never been able to predict the perfect time to get into the market. I just am always of the mind that we want to get in as soon as possible, as soon as we can afford, and then regularly contribute to our RRSP, our TFSA, our pension plans, all of that stuff, so we can make sure that we are building wealth no matter what's happening in the market. Do that dollar cost averaging.
Here's an email from somebody named William who says, diversification has always been the cornerstone of my investment portfolio. However, it's challenging to find uncorrelated investments, presumably not correlating to the slump that we're seeing. So William asks, what type of diversification would you recommend for 2025?
Honestly, I think that diversification in the U.S., Canada, international and emerging markets, and then making sure if you do have a potentially lower tolerance for risk, you don't want to be in 100% in stocks, you want to get some of that fixed income. You can also look to real estate and possibly gold. But, no amount of diversification will eliminate any kind of loss in returns when we're dealing with such a market event like we're experiencing now. So there's no perfect portfolio out there if that's what they're asking.
So no perfect portfolio, but you mentioned a few things like gold, for example. Understanding none of it's perfect, understanding none of us knows what Trump may do next. Are there certain things, like I think back to way back in 1987, when all of a sudden we had this massive drop in the stock exchange. And I remember talking to some calm, savvy investors who bought up blue chip stocks at that point because they knew, they were pretty sure they were going to rise again. Is there a similar strategy now that people are employing?
Everyone has a different investment philosophy. I'm of the mind that I want to invest in the entire stock market because I do not have time to do research in what is the up and coming company or industry. And I think most retail investors like, me and you don't have that kind of capacity. And even if you are the best, savviest investor, you may get it wrong. And so I think having that diversified portfolio, investing in the entire world and making sure there's, you've got that low cost portfolio. So you're really paying attention to fees because that's something that you can control is probably the best strategy moving forward.
One last question. We had a guest last hour in the program whose retirement date just happens to fall 2 days after the federal election. She's worked for a nonprofit, so it didn't make a huge amount of money. Her retirement kind of is based on how the stock market performs, and she's not going to delay her retirement.
Right.
And though you've touched on this before, what would your advice be to somebody in her situation?
Again, don't react because, again, we don't know how long this market event is going to last. We don't know how low it's going to be, and we don't know when it's going to recover. It could be, in a couple of weeks, a couple of months. We have no idea. The best thing that you can do is take a look at your own financial situation and see what is in your control. So if you're very concerned about your cost of living and if you have enough to pay for everything, let's see where is your money going. And is there anything that we could hit pause on to free up some cash flow just so we can maybe build up a bigger cash reserve? And that's number one thing I'm telling everyone is make sure you've got that cash reserve no matter what age you're at. That will make you feel safe and secure.
All right, Jessica, thank you very much for giving us some advice.
Thanks for having me.
Jessica Moorhouse, financial counselor and the best-selling author of Everything But Money.